Hello everyone, GoldenNova here, and it's time to round out Patron Week with this month's Quasar Commander's request, and I'm starting to sense a bit of a theme here. They've asked for metal foes, they've petitioned for Zodiacs, and with no more themes left in the second stage of the Dracoslayer Storyline, it's time to cover what has to be one of the most controversial themes printed at the end of the Arc V and beginning of Reign's era: True Kings and True Dracos. While the True Kings slowly made their way into the card pool since the Dark Illusion, arriving as destructive foils to that pack's lore archetype, the True Dracos made their appearance known in the final pack of Arc V, premiering in May 2017, Maximum Crisis. Though, strangely enough, they're the same archetype in the OCG, the True Dragons, though the big ones are called True Dragon Kings, so there is kind of a difference, though that would be like having the Subterra Behemoths and the Subterra Nemesis monsters be different themes, with all the support working for both, so it's still a huge pain. Fans of my Dracoslayer Storyline series will know that these two archetypes are diametrically opposed, each serving one of the lingering forms of Luster or Vector Pendulum left behind after their spirits had combined. But despite their differences, their support works for both themes. So for today, I'm forcing Mariamne and Calamity to wear the Get Along t-shirt for as long as it takes to account for all our Drake comrades, see how each group Drake conducts themselves, then find any accomplices that can take their themes Drake overboard. It's time to get to the truth of the matter with True Kings and True Dracos. But before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy what I do. Once we get to 40k, we're doing our next 5Ds video on Leo and Luna, and every sub helps. Also, check out my Discord, where I have inadvertently incurred the wrath of the Altergeist community. I guess that's one of those Yugi-tubing rites of passages, huh? And my Twitch, where you can watch me put all my lessons to the test live with viewer duels. And if you want to go that extra mile, join my Patreon where you can get my videos early and help us reach these video milestones. Thank you all so much for watching, and now, back to the video. So, what's the deal with the True Kings and True Dracos? Well, they're pretty different, so we'll start by covering the True Kings. After all, what's a hero without a good villain? That's a pretty complicated narrative question, but for this material, it's a sentiment that's never rang more true. All of them are level 9 worm monsters, and they each share two characteristics. One, while in the hand, you can destroy two other monsters in your hand and or face up on your field, including a monster of that True King's attribute, and if you do, special summon that True King from your hand. The effect also does a little something extra if you destroy two monsters of the same attribute. Two, they also have a floating effect that triggers when destroyed by a card effect from anywhere involving a worm monster of a different attribute in some way. For instance, one will summon from the grave, one will search from the deck, that kind of stuff. This lends themselves towards working in two different configurations, either being played in a mono-attribute archetype that matches theirs, or in a True King deck, using their summoning effects to pop their siblings to trigger their effects when destroyed by a card effect. Though the problem with that last option is that the True Kings don't have any overlapping attributes. Each one is the sole member of its element, so to fit their summoning requirements, you'll have to either draw multiples of the same one, or include a variety of non-True King monsters of different attributes as connective tissue. Once again, ones that love being exploded. First up is True King Agni Mazud the Vanisher, a fire monster with 2900 attack and 1900 defense, and if you destroy two fire monsters for this card's summon, you can banish a monster from your opponent's field or grave. And if this card is destroyed by a card effect, you can add a non-fire worm monster from your grave to your hand. The recursion is nice. Being able to buy back resources in a deck that keeps breaking their own seems like a no-brainer, and its removal effect is stellar. A non-targeting banish that can not only deal with problem monsters on the board, but potential ragamuffins in the grave is pretty flexible. Not to mention it's got a pretty decent attack stat for the work you have to put into it. Pair this with metal foes so you can just pendulum summon back the monsters you destroy, or Fire Kings as an absurd enabler, and your opponent's options are just gonna vanish. True King Barastos the Fathomer is a water monster with 1800 attack and 3000 defense, and if you destroy two water monsters for this card's summon, you can banish up to two Speller Trap cards from your opponent's field and or grave. And if this card is destroyed by a card effect, you can special summon a non-water worm type monster from your deck in defense position. This is pretty similar to Agni Mazud, but you get to hit two cards, though how useful spell and trap removal is going to be on a monster body is going to be largely dependent on the format. Hopefully one that doesn't have mine in it. But its on destruction effect is a pretty strong starter. Blow this up and you get any worm that's not a water. This unfortunately means you can't toss out Moye, but Taya does fit the bill. Heck, Barastos is even fodder for the token summoning. It also might find a home in Dynamist, who once again have the ability to pendulum summon themselves back when destroyed, and could potentially use the back row removal. The deck is good at fighting, not so good at dealing with floodgates. But do not try to mix this with Atlanteans, as their effects trigger when sent to the grave to activate a water monster's effect, but the destruction isn't cost, it's just the effect. That might seem pretty strange since you have to destroy the monsters to get the summon to go through, but it's one of those weird nuances you're gonna have to fathom in advanced play. True King Lithosygem, the Disaster, is an Earth monster with 2500 attack and 2300 defense, and if you destroy 2 Earth monsters for its summon, you can look at your opponent's extra deck and banish up to 3 monsters with different names from it. And if this card is destroyed by a card effect, you can special summon a non-Earth worm monster from your grave. Reviving monsters is, of course, a very useful effect, but good gravy is their on-summon ability ridiculous. Gaining perfect access about what's in your opponent's extra deck, maybe even before they get a chance to play anything, is already a great way to learn what your opponent might be up to. But also banishing 3 cards out of it? That knocks out 3 of any monster that doesn't have a duplicate to take its place, making this card the bane of the utility one of. Think of stuff like Nightmare Phoenix, Cerberus, and Unicorn. It also has one of the most explosive companion themes out of the whole lineup, and that's including the literal fire one, dinosaurs! While they do run the gamut of attributes, Lithosygem cracks Baby Ceratosaurus and Petite Pteranodon for a ton of value, which was, I feel like I have to remind you, on top of just getting to siphon off a 5th of your opponent's extra deck. In fact, it's still on the limited list to this day, and I hope it stays that way because any more copies would result in disastrous consequences. Mariamne is technically the true Draco Phoenix, but it operates like a true king, so we're just going to talk about them here. They're a wind monster with 2700 attack and 2100 defense, and if you destroyed 2 wind monsters to summon this, you can banish exactly 4 cards from the top of your opponent's deck. And if this card is destroyed by a card effect, you can add a non-wind worm monster from your deck to your hand. This is the most underwhelming of the team because not only can I count the number of good wind archetypes on one hand, to say nothing of the ones that want their stuff destroyed, its effect is a one-sided but worse necrophase. Maybe if you know what's on top of your opponent's deck, this is a way to keep them from getting to it, but blowing up Spiral Gear Drone doesn't seem like the most practical use of your time. The name is mismatched, the effect is out of place, so maybe not every Phoenix rises from the ashes as gracefully as it was before. But the big payoff is the Xyz that's terrified format after format, and has only just recently had its claws wrested from Master Duel, the true king of all calamities. A rank 9 Dark Xyz monster with 3000 attack and defense, requiring 2 or more level 9 monsters as material. Once per turn, as a quick effect, you can detach a material from this card and declare an attribute. That turn, all face-up monsters on the field become that attribute. Also, all monsters in your opponent's possession with that attribute can't activate their effects or attack. And monsters that True Draco and True King monsters in your hand would destroy with their effects can be chosen from your opponent's field. Now that last effect is a pretty cool enabler. It makes your opponent's field fodder for your True Kings, making their summons basically free while helping to break a board, while ensuring they get their full effect. The problem was, everything else. See, the lockdown effect is strong, but balanced by how hard it is to make level 9 monsters. Basically, True Kings had a stranglehold on that market, and since they didn't see much play, Calamities wasn't much of an issue. At the time! See, because this card is generic, it lined up very well with the next time the designers decided to explore the level 9 space. Virtual Worlds. Now, at the drop of a hat, you could summon a monster that floodgated everything your opponent put onto the field, basically skipped your opponent's battle phase, and if they were on a mono attribute deck, you could freeze all of their effects if you knew what they were on, because while it only changes the attributes of monsters on the field, it checks all cards in your opponent's possession for the effect lock. That means hand, grave, banished zone, everywhere. And as more and more decks started to access the level 9 synchro pool with more and more generic and powerful level 9 synchros to use as material, the more and more this card became hated by the community. And as of now, it's been banned from every official way to play Yu-Gi-Oh, including the OCG. Not even Mystic Mine and Max C have found a way to do that. They even had to kill it in the story just to make sure they weren't tempted to bring it back. But this is what happens every time the designers tempt fate. A broken effect almost no one can use is a broken effect that's going to cause massive problems down the line. They really are all just calamities waiting to happen. Alright, that's all the kings, now it's time for the Dracos. Like our previous subjects, all these monsters are worms, though their levels are a bit more varied. And when tribute summoning for these cards, you can tribute continuous spell and trap cards in place of monsters if you so choose, with the majority of their effects only available if they were tribute summoned. The focus is to punish your opponent for doing, well, anything, by gaining you card advantage, all while being very difficult to interact with. Oh, and a quick aside, I won't be covering Masterpiece the True Dracoslayer or Forge of the True Dracos. Technically they are True Draco cards, but they're tied up way more into Dracoslayer cards, so if we ever sit down and do an explained video on those, we'll cover them there. Now, the first three True Dracos are so similar, we can actually group them all together. Majesty Maiden, the True Draco caster, is a level 5 wind monster with 2300 attack and 1500 defense, and once per turn, while you control this tribute summoned monster and your opponent activates a card or effect, as a quick effect, you can add a True Draco or True King monster from your deck to your hand. Ignis Heat, the True Draco Warrior, is a level 5 monster with 2400 attack and 1000 defense, obligatory Monarch stat shout out here, and their effect has the same activation conditions as Majesty Maiden. But Ignis can take a True Draco or True King continuous spell from your deck and either activate it from your deck or add it to your hand. And Dynamite Knight, the True Draco Fighter, is a level 6 water monster with 2500 attack and 1200 defense, who still has the same activation conditions, but takes a True Draco or True King continuous trap card and either activates it right out of your deck or adds it to your hand. This makes up the backbone of the True Draco experience, getting you cards just for your opponent doing stuff. In fact, it's a pretty psychologically taxing move because basically every action they take has a negative consequence, i.e., giving you a free card. Even trying to hit them with an Imperm or Veiler to shut them off preemptively doesn't work, because that's activating a card and or effect. And because you can tribute summon them using your continuous spell and traps, they're super easy to deploy. Or should I say, continuous spells and traps. Drayath III, the True Draco Cavalry General, is a level 6 Earth monster with 2100 attack and 2800 defense, and while on the field, your opponent can't target face-up True Draco and True King monsters on the field with card effects, except this one. Also, they can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. And if this face-up tribute summoned monster leaves the field, you can special summon a True Draco or True King monster from your deck in defense position. But you'll generally want to summon True Kings over Dracos, since the latter won't have any kind of extra effect on the field. Though you might want to summon another copy of Dreath, because while the floating effect requires it to have been tribute summoned, the targeting and effect destruction protection effects just care that this card is on the field, making it even harder for your opponent to deal with your lineup. Dreath really is doing a good job of Dre covering for the team. Masterpiece, the True Draco Slaying King, is a level 8 light monster with 2950 attack and defense, and is unaffected by the effects of cards that have the same original card type as cards used for this card's tribute summon, counting monsters, spells, and traps. And once per turn, during either player's turn, if you control this tribute summoned monster, you can banish a continuous spell or trap card from your grave, then target another card on the field and destroy it. Wow, this card is obscene! Dryden was one thing, but now it's stapled onto an even bigger body that's a pseudo towers that can hit face down cards too! This was a menace to deal with back in the day, because hitting this thing with an effect it didn't have protection against was kind of a crapshoot, and getting a bigger monster was next to impossible. And really, you had to get two just in case the first one got sniped. Nowadays, there may be an argument for bringing this thing back as it's currently forbidden, but personally, I'd like to keep this locked up as long as possible. Besides, Lustre already made one masterpiece, now they're just showing off. Metaltron 12, the True Drake Combatant, is a level 9 light monster with 3000 attack and defense, and requires 3 tributes to normal summon, and can't be normal set. It's also unaffected by the same original card types as those used for its tribute summon, but since this card requires 3 tributes, if you use the right material, this actually can be a towers. And if this tribute summoned monster in its owner's control is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can special summon a fusion, synchro, or Xyz monster that is an earth, water, fire, or wind from your extra deck. So you get a humongous beatstick that's generally not going down except by battle, and when it does, you can pick your best non-light or dark monster from your extra deck, and as long as they're not sporting some kind of "this card can only be summoned by their particular summoning method" clause, you can slap them onto the field and go to town. However, it is pretty unwieldy. Even with a resource engine as good as True Draco's, tributing 3 cards is a lot, so it hasn't seen much play, even when Masterpiece was off the table. Still, not many cards can float you into Crystal Clearwing Synchro Dragon, so it's got that going for it. Alright, that's all of our monsters, now it's time for the spells and traps. Real quick though, there's also some key similarities between these cards as well. First, when sent from the field to the grave, all of our continuous cards trigger an effect. The continuous spell cards target a spell or trap card on the field and destroy it, while the continuous trap cards target a monster on the field and destroy it. And these combo pretty well with each other. Even when your opponent doesn't have a spell or trap card on the field you want to pop with your spell effect, you can hit one of your continuous trap cards, whether face up or face down, thus converting it into monster removal. And second, during the main phase, you can activate an effect that tribute summons a True Draco or True King monster, with the continuous spells doing so on your turn, and the continuous trap cards doing so on your opponent's turn. So you effectively get extra summons, and get to play a little bit on your opponent's turn. And because all of our continuous spells and traps trigger effects when sent from the field to the grave, you get some additional interruption on top of your summons. This deck is really frustrating to duel against, but I can't deny that it's got some really clever design. Disciples of the True Draco Phoenix is a continuous spell card, and it can target 3 True Dracos and or True King cards in your grave, shuffle them into your deck, then draws you a card. This effectively gives you an infinite grind game. As long as you have some number of Disciples in rotation, you can recycle cards back into your deck to use them for later, and you get to draw extenders, payoffs, or even the mythical out I've heard so much about. True Draco Heritage is a continuous spell card, and during your main phase, you can draw cards equal to the number of True Draco and True King card types sent from the field to the grave this turn. This is a massive reward for pulling off your game plan, drawing you up to 3 cards if a True King or Draco spell, trap, and monster were sent from the field to the grave that turn. But even just getting 1 or 2 is a great way to refill your hand, especially because Disciple's just gonna shuffle back those cards to get you more draws. Seriously, one of the most frustrating things about this deck is that Control doesn't usually have a lot of inherent card draw, but Dracos always seem to have some gas in the tank. But I guess when your progenitor is a fusion of 2 ancient dragon spirits whose physical manifestations are waging a global war causing massive destruction in their wake, you get a draw or 2. As a treat. True Draco Apocalypse is a continuous trap card, and it can target 1 other True Draco or True King card you control, destroy it, and if you do, the attack and defense of all face-up monsters your opponent controls become half their current attack and defense, even if this card leaves the field. An important clause because there's also no "until the end of this turn" on there, meaning that this is a non-targeting, board-wide debuff that does not go away. And it's not some piddly 200, 300 size loss. No monster with anything less than 4,000 can now go toe-to-toe against any of your True Dracos after this resolves, period. And of course, if you want the removal, you can just activate the Tribute Summon effect, use Apocalypse, and then blast a monster, easy as that. Your opponent can kiss their chances of victory goodbye with these Apocalypse. True King's Return is a continuous trap card that can target a True Draco or True King monster in your grave and special summon it in defense position. Also, for the rest of the turn, you can't special summon. That's actually the only effect in the entire theme that locks you out of something. Admittedly, losing special summons for the rest of the turn is a big one, but thankfully it only counts after you use it, so beforehand you're all clear. And since you can use this on your opponent's turn, and you primarily use extra normal summons, it only really keeps you from using your extra deck to access cards that you've splashed in. After all, the rank 5 and 6 pools have some nice cards in them. Now, the True Dracos you revive with this are only going to be big vanillas, but that's okay. As free monsters, their stats are pretty good, and they can still be tributed for summons, especially for Masterpiece and Metaltron. Heck, you could even summon Masterpiece and Metaltron with this because they don't have any special summon restrictions on them. But judging from the art, I don't think the True Kings are going to be returning to Monkey anytime soon. They look like they have other plans. Dragonic Diagram is a field spell, and all True Draco and True King monsters on the field gain 300 attack and defense. The first time each tribute summoned True Draco or True King monster would be destroyed by battle each turn, it is not, and once per turn you can destroy one other card you control or in your hand, and if you do, add a True Draco or True King card from your deck to your hand. Once again, we're greeted with the obligatory archetypal field spell that is not name-stamped, but unlike the rest of them, this one is actually good. Like, real good. Like, so good it has to be put on the limited list good. For True Kings, it destroys them even in your hand, letting you change them into a more useful card while triggering their effect. For True Dracos, you can pop your back row to similar effect. And they get battle protection once per turn while amping up their stats. Even Majesty Maiden goes up to 2600, which ain't too shabby. But the best part is that the True Kings aren't referring to the gigantic worms of destruction, but to the short kings that showed up to give Luster a bit more energy. As far as I'm concerned, they're the True Kings. Alright, so that's all the True King and True Draco cards, but what do we do with them? Well, for today's video, I'm going to be focusing exclusively on how to up your True Draco game, as the Kings have really lost their bite without calamities, and are really better at supporting other themes where their services can accentuate their strengths. True Dracos, on the other hand, are still a pretty savage control theme despite the hits, and the more we can slow down our opponent, the better our odds of success will be. So what can we play to help them out? Well, it's control, which means we have to talk about floodgates. Funnily enough, Goes in Match and There Can Be Only One don't really match up super well with us. Only Rivalry lines up with our mono-type list, and unfortunately keeps out any non-worm teammates we might want to tag in. However, this is another theme that can use skill drain beautifully. While we don't have a clever way of dodging the negation like prank kids do, we can use our continuous spell's grave effects to turn it off when it's no longer needed. We could also do the same for summon limit, though to be fair, we don't really need a lot of summons to be effective. And of course, we can do similar things with Mystic Mine. But if you want something that's a little less intensive than skill drain, Lose One Turn is certainly available. We get all the benefits, and our opponent is stuck with all the consequences. Unless they're on Flunder, but that's a whole other bag of birdseed. Speaking of field spells, Dragonic Diagram is a huge part of our theme's success, but at 1, we need ways to get to it beyond just digging for it via draws. However, we only really have Terraforming and Metaverse to work with, which are both also at 1. Planet Pathfinder can use our regular normal summon to search it out, but if you're truly feeling unhinged, you could go the set rotation route. It's also limited, but this can get you Diagram while giving your opponent Mystic Mine. Then it's their fault for slowing the game down if they choose to use it, not yours. Is it possible for us to use other worm themes to help us? Well, kinda. I'd avoid Metaphys, their focus on banishing isn't quite for us, but I could see some incidental synergies with Tenyi and Sword Soul. The former's spirits can be used as quick and easy tribute fodder if you don't have good access to your spells and traps, while the latter has some truly stupendous synchro monsters you can lean into. And since all their cards check for Sword Soul cards or worm monsters, True Dracos fit the bill. Even the tokens they generate can be used as tribute fodder if you're so inclined. If we want to go truly off the walls, we could add in some Monarch cards. The Monarch's Erupt is already a truly heinous floodgate, Stormforth is removal that lets us summon our True Dracos, and Domain Scythe locks your opponent, cutting off even more of their options. The downside is that a few of these cards require you to have no extra deck, which not only means you can't dip into it if you need some of the utility monsters, it also means you can't play Pot of Prosperity or Extravagance. However, Pot of Duality is still a fantastic pick, as you once again don't have to worry about the special summon lock. As for a silly tech pick, Crystal Beasts. Just splashing Crystal Beasts. They become continuous spells in the back row after all, giving you more tribute fodder. And with how much of a combo machine Sapphire Pegasus is, you can leverage their explosive power while using the control elements provided by True Dracos. It's kinda silly. And that's all I have to say about True Kings and True Dracos. Our little worms have a robust resource engine while being tough to overcome, while our big worms never really got their chance in the spotlight as a collective unit. But just you wait. We're gonna get some legacy support any day now that focuses them together as a coherent unit. They've terrified the competitive landscape in some form or another for years to come, and you never know when someone is gonna sleeve them up to take your next locals, or dare I say even regionals, by storm, claiming the title of True King of all calamities as their own. But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Are the true Draco kings the goat of control, or do we need to do a little regicide? Let me know in the comments, and if you haven't already, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to show your support, ring that bell so you don't miss an episode, and share this video with someone you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode was brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commander Harry, the ominous benefactor, Nebula Navigators, 3rd Dynasty, Adam Zajadel, Avi Chali, Kane Senpai, Cameron Berg, Corbinisms, Cozyboat 275, Eric, Frankie, Genesis Yu-Gi-Oh!, Gloomba 331, Great Big Pillock, Ironic, John Manji, Julia Sneezer, Larakia, Mana Charge, Marluxia's Girl, Meteornus, Michael Madsen, Mighty Action X, Muzuki Clark, Neo Trinity, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, Rem T Bright, RJ the Jank Monarch, Ruxith Sarani, Sophie, apparently, the Fresh Prince of Conair, the Wizard Moose, True Neutral, Xander Wolfensberger and Zyrus, Cosmic Crusaders, Bear Sharktopus Studios, Chaz Ghost, Chris Kessler, Emily, Eva Padilla, Howling Zangetsu, Inblink, Jesus Garcia, KL, Kale the Dragon, King Scarlet Yu-Gi-Oh!, Lord Whoop-de-Doo, Manga Pages, Marion James E. Picata, Nitromo, Sarah Loslushi, Shaquille Solomon, Shooting Star 3300, Star-Lord 777, Tucker Ordonez and the Legendary Raven, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. I'm only able to continue doing this thanks to the support of these lovely people. So if you'd like to be a part of these credits, as well as help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, please check out my YouTube membership or Patreon links in the description to see if I have anything you'd like on offer. And if you'd like to catch up on some related lore, check out this video I made covering the Dracoslayer Storyline. And if you want to see two Yu-Gi-Tubers going at it, check out Noah Jenk and I's latest series Progression Polls, where your voice shapes the format. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.